The world of entertainment is a fast-paced environment where trends emerge and disappear in the blink of an eye. Yet every so often, a singular phenomenon arrives that completely redefines the landscape for an entire generation. It is a strange and beautiful thing to look back at the cultural markers of our youth and realize just how much time has truly slipped through our fingers, transforming simple childhood memories into profound historical milestones. Imagine a time when smartphones were still a distant novelty, social media was in its absolute infancy. And the biggest worry in the world for millions of young teenagers was simply finding a place to fit in among the complex social hierarchies of adolescent life. In that specific cultural moment, nobody could have predicted that a modest project intended for a niche cable television network would ignite a global firestorm, changing the trajectory of pop culture forever and shaping the careers of dozens of future superstars. It began without any grand expectations, hiding behind a generic production title that suggested it might just be another fleeting piece of background noise in the vast sea of children's television programming. Yet, when the lights finally came up and the music started playing, a spark was lit that would eventually burn so brightly it illuminated the entire global entertainment industry, creating a legacy that refuses to fade even after 2 full decades of massive societal and technological transformation. To fully understand the gravity of this phenomenon, one must journey back to the mid-2000s, an era defined by a distinct style of music, fashion, and media consumption that feels light years away from the hyper-connected reality we navigate today. Those who grew up during this vibrant period remember the unique magic of gathering around a physical television set at a specific hour, waiting with bated breath for a premiere that felt like a major community event. It was a time of shared experiences where friendship groups would discuss the exact same television moments at school the very next morning, creating an intense, unified bond that modern streaming platforms rarely manage to replicate. Today, the children who once participated in those enthusiastic playground debates and spent their weekends hosting crowded living room sleepovers have grown into adults, navigating the heavy responsibilities of maturity, from corporate careers to long-term mortgages. Yet, despite the gray realities of adulthood and the inexorable crushing passage of time, the mere mention of those familiar opening chords still possesses the extraordinary power to transport millions of grown individuals back to a simpler, more innocent chapter of their lives. It is an enduring testament to the power of storytelling and melody that a piece of art created for children could successfully weave itself into the permanent fabric of modern cultural history. As we reflect on this incredible journey and prepare to dive deep into the hidden mechanics of a franchise that captured the hearts of a generation, it becomes clear that the stories behind the camera are often just as fascinating, dramatic, and miraculous as the narrative that unfolded on our screens. This is a journey through unexpected struggles, intense personal rivalries, secret vocal contributions, and massive financial gambles that easily could have ended in absolute disaster for everyone involved. If you find yourself deeply moved by this nostalgic trip down memory lane and want to stay connected with more deep dives into the definitive cultural moments that shaped our world, please take a quick second to support the channel by subscribing, liking the video, and hitting the notification bell so you never miss an episode. By joining our growing community of pop culture enthusiasts, you ensure that we can continue bringing you these highly detailed, carefully researched retrospectives on the media that defined your upbringing. The origin of this specific cultural phenomenon is rooted in a massive risk taken by executives who were genuinely unsure if modern audiences would even care about a musical format adapted for a contemporary teenage audience. Musicals were widely considered a relic of a bygone Hollywood era, an outdated medium that surely could not compete with the edgy, fast-paced reality television and high-octane dramas dominating the airwaves at the turn of the millennium. The budget allocated for the initial production was remarkably modest, reflecting a cautious corporate approach that preferred to hedge its bets rather than risk a significant financial loss on an unproven concept. The young cast assembled for the project consisted mostly of unknown teenagers who were hungry for an opportunity but possessed very little mainstream industry experience or star power to guarantee a successful outcome. They were sent to a real, functioning high school in Utah to film under an incredibly tight schedule that left absolutely zero room for errors, delays, or creative self-indulgence. The pressure was immense. The expectations from the studio were surprisingly low. and the actors were forced to rehearse their intense choreographies in cramped spaces while navigating the logistical nightmare of filming around real students who were actively attending classes in the exact same building. It was within this the sheer crucible of strict limitations and limited resources that something truly magical began to take shape. Fueled by the raw energy, dedication, and undeniable chemistry of a cast that had absolutely nothing to lose. Every day on set was a race against the clock, requiring the crew to utilize creative, cost-effective workarounds for complex visual sequences that would normally demand millions of dollars in special effects or specialized set designs. The atmosphere was a volatile mix of youthful enthusiasm, artistic experimentation, and the palpable tension of creative minds working under extreme constraints, creating an environment where legendary behind-the-scenes stories were born daily. From secret friction between key cast members who initially struggled to find common ground, to the revelation that the lead actor's voice was not entirely his own during the most critical musical climaxes. The reality of the production was a far cry from the seamless, polished perfection that audiences would eventually witness. As the premiere date loomed closer, the sense of anticipation within the small production team grew, though none of them could have possibly comprehended that their 24 days of intense, exhausting labor would alter the course of the entertainment world forever. The stage was set for a historic television broadcast that would completely shatter every existing metric of network success, laying the foundation for a billion-dollar empire that would dominate global merchandise, music charts, and theatrical box offices for years to come. When the historic night of January 20, 2006 finally arrived, the modest $4.2 million made-for-television movie shattered all expectations, igniting a cultural explosion that instantly transformed the Disney Channel and set a single-night audience record with 7.7 million viewers. This massive overnight success took the entertainment industry completely by surprise, as a project with low corporate expectations and a microscopic production budget became the most-watched broadcast in the history of the entire network. The immediate financial and cultural impact was staggering, as the film's soundtrack rapidly climbed the music charts to become the first-ever television movie soundtrack to hit the #1 spot on the Billboard charts, eventually selling 3.7 million copies and finishing the year as the absolute top-selling album of 2006, beating out every single major global music icon. Within its first 2 years alone, this unexpected creative gamble generated roughly $1 billion in operating profit for Disney, completely rewriting the rules of modern media merchandising, home video sales, and soundtrack production. Yet, behind this massive wall of commercial success and glossy presentation lay a complex web of intense studio secrets, hidden artistic contributions, and profound interpersonal drama that threatened to derail the franchise from its very inception. One of the most shocking and enduring revelations that continues to send shockwaves through the fan community 2 decades later is the fact that Zac Efron, who became an instant global heartthrob for his portrayal of the star athlete Troy Bolton, barely sang a single note in the original movie. The true vocal power behind Troy's iconic performance was actually provided by Drew Seeley, a talented singer and actor who had also tested for the lead role and whose vocal tracks were seamlessly blended with Efron's voice to match the specific musical pitch required for the songs. Efron only sang the very first lines of the opening duet, a single line in the climactic musical number, and a few brief bars during the balcony scene, while Seeley handled the heavy lifting for major tracks like the high-energy athletic anthem and the emotional laboratory reprise. While this hidden vocal arrangement allowed the movie to achieve musical perfection, it created an intense personal determination within Zac Efron to fully reclaim his artistic voice, leading him to undergo rigorous vocal training so he could perform 100% of his own singing from the second film onward, proving his true capabilities to the world at the exact same time. A completely different kind of tension was brewing between two of the most memorable characters on set, as Ashley Tisdale and Lucas Grabeel, who displayed flawless on-screen sibling chemistry as the theatrical antagonists Sharpay and Ryan Evans, genuinely could not stand each other during the initial stages of production. Lucas had initially hesitated to even join the project, openly admitting that he thought the original script was one of the worst things he had ever read, before reluctantly auditioning for Troy and eventually being redirected to the role of Ryan. During the highly competitive callback process, Ashley walked right up to him and began giving him unsolicited, critical notes on his acting performance. a bold move that left Lucas seething with anger and establishing a deep mutual dislike that lasted through the entire filming process of the first movie. It remains a true testament to their incredible professionalism and artistic growth that these two performers managed to channel that friction into an iconic on-screen partnership, eventually developing a deep, lifelong friendship long after the cameras stopped rolling. The physical reality of creating this masterpiece was a continuous race against time, as the entire production team had a grand total of just 24 days to shoot the entire film on location at the Real East High School in Salt Lake City, Utah. The shooting schedule was so incredibly tight that production had to be paused completely whenever the actual students of East High were moving through the hallways between their real classes, creating an atmosphere of constant rush and logistical chaos. Furthermore, the iconic auditorium scenes, which served as the emotional backdrop for the final callbacks, could not even be filmed at the actual school because the building's real auditorium was undergoing extensive renovations, forcing the crew to relocate to a completely different school miles away to capture those historic musical moments. Even the definitive title of the movie was a product of pure accident and creative exhaustion, as the phrase High School Musical was originally just a temporary working title used by the studio during the writing phase, with the explicit intention of replacing it with a clever, polished name before the final release. However, as the intense shooting schedule progressed and the marketing deadlines approached, the creative team simply ran out of time to invent a better alternative, and the working title became the permanent name of a franchise that would soon be known in every household across the globe. This raw, unpolished energy translated directly into the performances, particularly during the complex athletic choreography where the cast insisted on absolute authenticity, ensuring that all the intricate basketball trick shots seen during the training musical number were completely real, without any assistance from computer-generated imagery or editing tricks. Zac Efron trained for 3 exhausting hours every single day prior to the start of principal photography just to ensure his athletic skills were fully believable on camera, allowing the crew to capture the entire complicated sequence in just a few complete takes. As the massive success of the first film propelled the franchise into a high-stakes sequel, the network increased the budget to $7 million, resulting in an unprecedented television event when the second movie premiered to a staggering 18.6 million viewers, instantly becoming the most-watched basic cable broadcast of all time. But as the franchise reached its absolute peak of global popularity and transitioned into a massive theatrical release for the third installment, the intense pressures of fame and real-world romance began to fracture the core foundation of the cast. Zac Efron and Vanessa Hudgens had been involved in a high-profile, real-life romantic relationship for nearly 3 years by the time production began on the final movie, and the emotional weight of their personal lives began to create severe friction on set. Screenwriter Peter Barsacchini later recalled a terrifying moment when Vanessa requested to use his private production office to have a serious private conversation with Zac, which immediately dissolved into an intense, screaming argument that echoed through the walls of the building. The creative team watched in absolute suspense, fearing that a sudden breakup between the two main leads would completely paralyze the production and destroy the immense financial investment of the theatrical film. It was described as a true miracle and a profound blessing that the two young stars managed to maintain their professionalism, locking away their personal grievances long enough to deliver an incredibly emotional, cohesive performance before finally ending their relationship for good in 2010. The immense pressure surrounding the production of the third and final installment did not stop with the personal relationships of its lead stars, as the entire conceptual direction of the film underwent massive, systemic changes before it ever reached the silver screen. In the early stages of development, the studio seriously considered steering the franchise into a completely unexpected genre, drafting a full script and conceptual design for a project titled Haunted High School Musical, which would have dropped the beloved characters into a spooky Halloween-themed narrative filled with supernatural tropes. Zac Efron later confirmed to the media that while the haunted concept was actively discussed by network executives, the creative team ultimately realized that the audience deserved a more grounded, emotional farewell to their high school years, leading them to pivot back toward a traditional graduation story. This strategic decision paid off spectacularly as High School Musical 3 Senior Year became the only installment in the entire franchise to receive a full global theatrical release, completely shattering industry records for musical films by grossing over $250 million at the international box office. The process of casting this final cinematic masterpiece was also filled with fascinating close calls and alternate realities that could have completely shifted the landscape of modern Hollywood stardom. A young Selena Gomez was heavily courted by Disney executives to join the final film as Tiara Gold, a manipulative new British antagonist designed to act as a direct rival to Sharpay Evans. But Gomez famously turned down the highly coveted role simply because she felt a strong desire to pursue mature, non-musical acting projects outside the traditional Disney network. The role ultimately went to British actress Gemma Mackenzie Brown, a strategic casting decision made by the producers specifically to reward and capitalize on the massive, unprecedented popularity of the franchise across the United Kingdom. At the exact same time, a then-unknown teenager named Taylor Lautner attended the massive open casting calls for the third film, narrowly missing out on a supporting role that ultimately went to Matt Prokop. A twist of fate that allowed Lautner to immediately audition for and land his life-changing role in the Twilight Saga just weeks later, beyond the glamorous world of international box office records and pop culture trivia. The true heart of this enduring franchise lay in the deep, transformative relationships formed between the experienced Hollywood veterans and the young, impressionable actors on set. Alison Reed, who brought the wildly eccentric, fiercely passionate drama teacher Ms. Darbus to life with her brilliant theatrical performance, did not stop being a guide when the director called cut, establishing herself as a profound real-life acting mentor to Monique Coleman behind the scenes. Coleman, who portrayed the fiercely intelligent Taylor McKessie, later revealed that she had been struggling deeply with her confidence as a performer during the intense production, and it was Reed who provided a safe, supportive space on set, helping her rebuild her self-esteem and master the complex emotional mechanics of film acting. This profound sense of community and artistic growth is exactly why the legacy of the franchise remains so intensely potent 20 years later. A reality that Zac Efron himself admitted he never could have anticipated during those exhausting days of shooting in Utah. Reflecting on the historic two-decade anniversary, Efron expressed a deep, humble sense of awe, stating that the young cast was simply having fun, learning the mechanics of film production as they went, and completely enjoying each other's company without any inkling that their work would become a permanent cultural institution passed down to entirely new generations of viewers. The sheer magic of the production even extended to its visual effects, where the crew utilized incredibly creative, low-tech solutions to create the most iconic romantic imagery in television history. The beautiful, sparkling snow that fell gently around Troy and Gabriella during their pivotal New Year's Eve meet-cute was actually created entirely out of dehydrated potato flakes, meaning that the most definitive romantic catalyst for a generation's pop culture upbringing was made possible by a common grocery store product. As time moved forward, it became increasingly obvious that this simple musical franchise acted as a massive, unparalleled farm system for the future of global entertainment, launching and intersecting with the careers of an extraordinary roster of A-list talent before they became household names. A young Miley Cyrus made a brief, blink-and-you-miss-it cameo appearance during the final musical number of the second film, while the broader franchise ecosystem eventually paved the way for modern pop icons like Olivia Rodrigo and Joshua Bassett to skyrocket to global fame through the critically acclaimed streaming spin-off series. Bassett's journey with the franchise represents a truly beautiful full-circle moment, as his entire professional performing career began when he was just an 8-year-old child, playing the incredibly minor role of junior varsity jock number 2 in a local community theater production of High School Musical. He went on to perform in over 30 local stage productions before finally landing the lead role in the modern Disney Plus series, embodying the exact spirit of dedication, passion, and artistic growth that the original movies championed. Despite this massive multi-generational impact, the main actors who built this empire remained incredibly humble about their success, with Ashley Tisdale openly admitting that she never expected any of this cultural relevance to last beyond its initial broadcast. Tisdale, whose brilliant performance as Sharpay Evans gave the world one of the most charismatic, fashion-forward, and endlessly quotable antagonists in television history, noted that while every artist hopes their work will be enjoyed, The sheer longevity and permanent cultural footprint of this franchise is something none of them could have ever dreamed of. Yet, even within a franchise that achieved near-perfect narrative execution across 3 feature films, there remain tantalizing pieces of lost art that fans still desperately wish had been brought to life. During the development of the original films, the screenwriters had fully written and planned a grand, highly dramatic musical duet between Coach Bolton and Ms. Darbus, an explosive creative face-off that would have allowed the rival adults to sing out their ideological warfare over sports and the arts. The musical number was completely structured and ready for production, but due to the incredibly tight 24-day shooting schedule and budget constraints, the scene was quietly dropped and never filmed, leaving a massive piece of unreleased history that fans continue to campaign for to this day. Now, 2 full decades after that fateful January night, we look back at the hallways of East High not just with nostalgia, but with a profound appreciation for a lightning-in-a-bottle moment that can never be replicated. The kids who memorized those complex dance routines in their bedrooms are now navigating the complex realities of adulthood. Yet the timeless message of breaking free from expectations and staying true to yourself remains just as vital today as it was in 2006. The music continues to play, the legacy continues to grow, and the Wildcats of the world will forever stand together, proving that some stories are truly timeless.